So today we're back with another 12 solo carry champions video. This time we're taking a closer look at the top lane. Don't forget to check out our top 12 mid lane picks too, and you can find that over on our channel. So let's dive straight into it, and first off in that number 12 spot we've got the big dog himself, Nasus. This champion has always had the potential to pop off and carry games by himself if he's allowed to do so. If Nasus gets a decent lane and farms up those stacks, he becomes an absolute monster. And before you know it, he's popping everyone on the map with just his Q. Nasus does have some pretty awful matchups, but every good Nasus player should know how to overcome these. There are ways to come out on top in every single lane. As you know, this is applicable with every single champion, but with champions like Nasus who really need to scale, this is even more important. He is a pretty one-dimensional champion, but this does not mean he cannot carry. When he gets a lead, his split push is mental. Once you've got a couple of hundred stacks on your Q and you're in a side lane, you can bring several opponents to the lane and pretty much just kill them all while staying alive at the same time. Not only that, but you also deal a crazy amount of damage to structures. So if they do leave you for about a minute in a side lane, you can pretty much just kill their nexus. Now Nasus is not the most obvious of 1v9 champions. The ones further down this list are far more obvious as to how they carry, but do not underestimate the dog. If you forget about him and he scales up, this guy will simply walk into a 5-man team, take no damage, and deal an absolute ton too. Next up in the number 11 spot we've got Camille, and she is easily one of the most iconic top laners in the recent seasons, and although she's definitely dipped in popularity a bit in season 12, she's still more than capable of carrying games by herself from that role. So Camille is a bit of a classic top laner, and it's fairly obvious to understand how she can carry games. When Camille gets a lead, she can easily keep it, but that's not enough to 1v9. The difference between a good Camille and an average one is not just keeping that lead, but it's how she can abuse it and how she can carry those games. Camille can constantly fight and constantly take down the enemy top laner, and she just becomes so damn strong that no one on the map can stop her. You can bring the jungler up, the mid laner, or even the support, and when you're ahead, you have the choice of either fighting and trying to kill them, or just kiting away with your E and allowing your team to punish the map elsewhere. A huge part of playing top lane and carrying from top lane is absorbing pressure, so plenty of the champions on this list do have this quality. But Camille is just a fantastic champion who really thrives off this. Camille's snowball potential and ability to just completely abuse her leads really does make her capable of carrying so many games by herself. She has so much to offer as well. She's got high mobility, her ultimate allows her to isolate and assassinate carries, and sometimes it feels like she has a built-in Cho'Gath ultimate on her Q. No, seriously, it does a ridiculous amount of damage. This champion is absolutely bonkers, and if she gets an item and experience lead, she can dart around her lane and truly punish anyone who tries to step forward to get a few minions. If you pair all of Camille's strengths with some high macro gameplay and good wave management, you can definitely abuse this champion to solo carry games in season 12. Number 10 is Yone, and this champion is one who most players simply hate playing against. If you want to be that guy though, then this champion can really 1v9 as you'd expect if he manages to get a bit fed. Now don't get me wrong, Yone definitely suffers from a pretty weak early game, although he has no resource restriction and he does have a good amount of survivability and mobility to stay alive. A ton of early game bruisers can actually bully him before he gets these core items though, and Yone doesn't actually get any defensive stats until his third item. But when he does get that shield bow, IE and death stance combo, he is so hard to beat. Now all of this does make Yone a bit of a risky pick, but if you manage to outplay your opponents and actually get a kill advantage early game, your lead will snowball at a ridiculous pace. Yone's ability to dive turrets and abuse his advantage is simply second to none, and there's not many champions that can do this as easily as Yone's E just makes it so risk-free. Snowballing lanes isn't really where it ends for Yone though. If you're super fed and you're against a team that doesn't really have the tools to deal with him, you can genuinely one-shot the majority of enemy champions. His ultimate is secretly an incredible team fighting tool as well. Now it is somewhat easy to dodge, but the range is massive, and if you get a good flank off, this ultimate can stack up an entire team ready for an easy follow-up for your own teammates. Yone is without a doubt a lot more versatile than people realise, and he can carry games in a lot of different ways. Split pushing, team fighting, making picks, deleting objectives, deleting carries, and there's just so many ways you can abuse this guy's potential. Number 9 is the Crabman himself, and it's Urgot. This champion is just a terror to play against, and you'd think that Urgot suffered from those Hullbreaker nerfs, but he's still doing just fine. This champion is just so perfect at punishing players who really do not understand how he works. And then even those who do understand, he can still roll all over them. Urgot's strengths are again similar to a lot of top lane bruisers. He gets a few kills, it becomes impossible to fight, and he basically just walks all over the map. Urgot is exceptionally good at 1v2ing though. If they come up to your lane, you focus one down with your ultimate and burst them out, and then use its fear to take down the second target afterwards. Urgot is not the best team fighter in the world, but he does do brilliantly when it comes to cleaning up fights. If you manage to line up a good flank or a cheeky teleport in the mid game and you've got a few kills, you can just get behind enemy teams and kill everyone you see. The second part of his ultimate that fears people if you've killed someone with it is absolutely bonkers in close proximity fights. Again, similar to Nasus, Urgot's 1v9 is a little bit less obvious than some of the other picks on this list, but he is more than capable of becoming way too powerful to deal with, and this just results in him slowly running away with the game. Number 8 is going to go to Quinn. She is by far the biggest abuser of any ranged advantage in the top lane right now. She simply wins the majority of games easily, and unless she gets a ton of jungle attention, she can just stomp her way to victory. Quinn absolutely excels at beating lanes, and then when she's got a lead from beating those lanes, she just keeps beating them and beating them and beating them. There is just no champion that is safe from a Quinn when they're farming under their own turret. She can constantly dart in and out of turret range, abusing her passive, abusing her blind, and abusing her E to just ruin your whole game. The great thing about Quinn though is she's not just great at stomping lanes. She is probably the best roaming top laner in the entire game at the moment, especially now that those pesky Smite Janna players are all gone. Quinn's ultimate means she can basically just soar around the map at the speed of light, and she can gank top, she can gank bot, she can fight for dragon, and she can get back to top lane just in time to not miss any minions. Once Quinn's got a few kills, the damage she does in a short space of time just basically means she can walk into mid and burst you down before you can even flash. And if you do flash, her E's probably going to follow you. The thing about Quinn though is she doesn't actually scale too well. Now of course she builds like a marksman, so she's going to do a ton of damage, but due to Quinn's low range, if she's not far ahead enough that she can just one-shot people, she's just going to die. This means it's really important that you absolutely stomp early games on Quinn, and as you get into the mid game, you need to be in complete control and completely terrorizing everyone that exists on the Summoner's Rift. If you can pull her off, Quinn is an absolutely fantastic champion in Season 12, so if you haven't tried playing her yet, now is the time to give her a go. In the number 7 position, we've probably got one of the most controversial choices in this entire video, and that's going to be Singed. Now you're probably thinking, wait, no way does Singed 1v9. Well, you'd be surprised. This season, he is on fire, and although you may not see him very often, the players that are playing him are absolutely loving their lives. The way that Singed carries games is basically just by irritating everyone. He runs around, poisons you, flips you, slows you down, stops your mobility, and basically just wins the game off it. Now, if you don't have experience on this champion, you can feel utterly useless. And if you get behind, that's often going to be the case. But if you know what you're doing and you manage to get a bit of a lead, this champion becomes unkillable whilst dealing a ridiculous amount of damage over time. If you're playing any squishy champion and you have no summoner spells, Singed is just going to laugh as he runs straight into you and flings you back into his entire team. Singed carries so many games by himself, and you would never really expect it, and no one really knows how he does it. But this is why he's so effective, because people just do not understand how to play against this champion. He's got a very low pick rate, he's got a very unique playstyle, and this just means people are not equipped to deal with him. Singed really does have a fantastic time in extended fights, and there's no real part of the game where he becomes useless. In fact, the weakest part of his game is the early game, but if you get through lane without making too many mistakes, you're always going to be relevant in the mid game. I could talk about how this champion carries games for hours, but all you need to know is no one knows how to play against him, and that you can really abuse this to win games. On the complete other side of the scale, number 6 is going to go to Fiora, and everybody knows just how hard this champion can carry on her own. Fiora is pretty much the definition of a top lane solo carry monster, and there's not really too much explaining I'm going to need to do if you've ever played against a good one. One of my good friends is a Fiora one-trick, and he is constantly defying the odds and constantly overturning and winning fights that he should just simply not win. This champion does feel a little bit illegal when she's played by the right person. Trust me, I have seen it time and time again when this guy wins games that he should simply not win just because of this champion's skill ceiling and the champion's skill potential. Fiora is literally called the Grand Duelist, and this is a fundamental part of playing her. It's all about 1v1s, and it's all about those matchups. If you learn the matchups inside and out, you can beat every single one. When you beat your matchup, you then get an advantage, and what you do with that advantage, you basically walk all over the game. You become so strong that no one can come near you, and if they do, you can easily 1v2 or even 1v3 if you're good enough. Fiora's kit has all the tools that you need to do this. She's got mobility, she's got burst, she's got a ridiculous ability in her W, which allows her to block incoming abilities and crowd control. Then you've got her ultimate, which brings even more burst and a ton of healing. And when you combine all of this together, it just makes her so good to carry with. Fiora has always historically been one of these champions, ever since she got reworked back in the day. And I'm pretty sure there's never going to be a season where you can't play this champion and you can't carry games with her. She may take a bit of practice, but if you can get the hang of her and you can learn the matchups, this champion can get so fed that no one in the game can deal with her. Another top laner that can carry games almost in a Fiora-like fashion is going to be number 5, and that's Irelia. Aurelia has been in this game for such a long time, and she's been carrying games by herself for that entire duration. Now, everybody knows just how effective a talented Aurelia player can be, and what she offers and what she brings to the table is just ridiculous. Aurelia's ability to 1v9 starts pretty early into the game. She can kill her enemies pre-6 fairly easily by darting through minion waves, abusing her passive and locking them down with the stun. If she gets a lead pre-6, this just means when she gets level 6, she's going to kill you so easily. And if she does, now she can basically just farm you even if you try and hide under your turret. Aurelia's Q allows her to dive turrets so easily. You leave one minion behind you, you Q, you R, you E, you W, you auto, they've got no chance of surviving and you're back in your lane safe and sound. Probably back at full health too. Stomping lanes, diving turrets and abusing advantages is Aurelia's middle name, even though that's a bit of a long one, but it really is what she's all about. After the lane phase, it's all about holding that lead, abusing it and punishing the rest of the game with it. Aurelia isn't really the best team fighter, but she can flank similar to a lot of champions on this list. She's really good at cleaning up fights, but she's also brilliant at side laning and split pushing too. If you've got a bit of a level advantage and a bit of an item advantage on Aurelia, you've got your death stance, you've got your core items, you're going to be so hard to kill. And she's just one of those champions that if she does get this advantage, you're never going to beat her. Moving on to the number 4 spot, and this is someone with a bit of a different playstyle to the few champions we've just mentioned, and that's going to be Kayle. Kayle is completely the opposite. She's all about scaling, farming, minimizing losses, minimizing risk, and getting to level 16 as quickly as she can. When she does get level 16 though, and she's got a few items, this champion's damage is completely off the scale. Now, Kayle's ability to solo carry is very unique, and basically it's all about getting to that late game. You may have some real difficulties in lane. She has a ton of bad matchups and everybody knows that she's weak during this period and everybody knows how much damage she does late game. So all the attention is on putting Kayle behind. You're probably going to have junglers coming up and camping you often. They're going to get rift heralds, they're going to try and dive you and they want to try and stop you from scaling as often as they can. But if you can play around this, you can avoid dying, you can avoid inting, you can farm up, you can scale. By the time you get to the mid game, you're going to be so much stronger. And because of all the attention you've received, the rest of your team are probably going to be quite strong too. The best thing about Kayle is that it doesn't really matter how the game goes, because as long as you gradually farm and you gradually scale, you will always have the ability and the opportunity to 1v9 when you get there. If you do somehow manage to get a lead in the early to mid game, this just means you're going to scale quicker, you're going to level up quicker, you're going to get more farm, more items, and you're going to basically 1v9 sooner rather than later. No one on this planet can tell me that Kayle doesn't deserve a place on this list, especially if she gets to the late game. We're getting close to that number 1 spot now, guys, but in number 3, we've got Tryndamere. Tryndamere has been solo carrying games since the birth of League of Legends. This champion has been terrorizing players for over a decade. Yes, League of Legends is that old and we've all been playing it for that long. Well, most of us. I'm not really too convinced that I need to actually tell you guys how that Tryndamere carries games by himself. He kills his lane opponent, he kills them again, he dives them with his ultimate, he dives them again, and then he walks into the mid game and one-shots 3 carries at once. It really is that simple when it comes to carrying games on Tryndamere. You get ahead in lane, you get really fed, you become impossible to deal with, you split push, you take turrets, you take lives, you win the game, you take their girlfriends, you take their wives. I think I got a bit carried away there. But either way, Tryndamere definitely deserves a place on this list, so I don't think anyone will argue with this one. Garen has had one of the highest win rates at all ranks for the entirety of Season 12 so far, and that's why he's getting the number 2 position. Garen is the ultimate pub stomping top laner. He simply abuses players that don't know how to play against him, and he's the auto-fill killer. Garen brings a tremendous amount of early game damage, and this just allows him to snowball so quickly. His Q and his Beyblade E make him win so many early trades, and then when he gets his ultimate, it's so easy for him to farm kills and all-ins. Garen's ultimate does some crazy damage, and it's really easy to use as well, seeing as his point and click ability. Garen is probably one of the easiest top laners to play and one of the easiest to be effective on. It's very hard to lose lane on him, especially when you factor in his sustain passive, which means he never actually needs to recall. All you gotta do if you lose a trade is walk back to your turret, let yourself heal back up, get back into lane and try and kill them again. When you get a lead on Garen, you can basically just walk around the map and one-shot all of the carries that you see. Your Q and R is genuinely enough to kill a squishy target if you've got a few kills and items ahead of them. If you've ever played Garen and you've got a Yuumi on your team, this is probably one of the most toxic combinations in the game. Get yourself an Oracle Lens, camp in an enemy jungle in a brush somewhere and have fun as enemies walk into you and die before they can even press flash. Garen truly is a fantastic choice to go for to carry games by yourself in Season 12. Just don't pick him against me, please. That brings us to the number 1 position. The best solo carry top laner of Season 12 just has to be Riven. Riven is truly having the season of her life. Ever since those changes to her itemization, she's been sitting on one of the highest win rates in the entire game, and it's pretty obvious to see just why. Riven's core build of Gore Drinker, Lucidity Boots and Death Stance makes her ridiculously strong. And not only does she deal a tremendous amount of damage, but she's also ridiculously hard to actually kill, mainly due to her mobility, her shields and her itemized sustain. The fact that Riven has no resource restriction and she's completely based on cooldowns just means she excels in those extended fights. She can come in, she can burst down a target, she can kite away for a little bit with her Q, she can come back in, she can kill you again, she can heal back up, she can do this on repeat for the entire game. All you gotta do if you're playing Riven is make sure you don't get too far behind early game. If you do, you're never gonna become relevant and you're never gonna become the champion that Riven can be. But if you go even, or God forbid you get ahead, you're gonna roll all over the game so quickly and people are just not gonna be able to deal with you. Riven's split push is really strong, and so is her team fighting. She's really good at flanking, cleaning up, like a lot of champions on this list, but she does it better than all the rest, simple as. To add to all of Riven's strengths, she also has a very high skill ceiling, and there is tons of advanced mechanics and combos that you can pull off to beat your enemies against the odds and win those fights you never should have won. It does feel pretty awesome carrying games as Riven. You do feel like a bit of a magician, and to be honest, you can look like one too. But the champion is actually a lot easier than you think. All you gotta do is learn a few combos, learn how the champion works, and learn how to jump over walls, and you will easily carry games with Riven this season. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of this top 12 solo carry champions in the top lane for solo queue this season. We hope you agree with the majority of our choices and let us know in the comments which champion you're enjoying the most in that top lane. That's all from us here at Mobalytics, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.